Hello, very good morning. As you all know, India is a country that loves to dance. From festivals to film, dance is an integral part of our cultural heritage. A dance culture that is vibrant, diverse, and multidimensional, and simultaneously old and new, is the legacy that the youth of this country holds tightly to their hearts. We have an array of respected gurus who enlighten our understanding of dance. Though dance had always been an integral part of our social fabric, 21st century witnessed some major shifts in the way dance is produced and performed. It has traveled, quote unquote, from a morally correct profession to a spiritual discourse and to an upadhi or tool for social transformation. The 21st century can be marked as an age of paradigm shift in the field of performing arts, and it has influenced the everyday life in one way or the other. And our department gives equal importance to the performance part and the academic part of dance. And as well as we have been creating a platform for an art dialogues in the pre-COVID era. Now COVID is a reality and we have to live with it and the show must go on. So the Department of Mohiniyattam, Sree Sankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi is back with added spirit and vigor and happy to host the 3-day international webinar on contemporary choreographies in Indian classical dance. We have an excellent set of gurus and academicians who made a mark in their respective field on Indian classical dance. I am happy that other departments have also started copying such events along with us. So I am over to Anantu, who is an accomplished singer of our department, for the official welcome address. I would like to mention our VC is coming and we are waiting for him to join. Over to Anantu.
Good morning all. Thank you for being here with us today. It's my pleasant duty to welcome you all to the 3-day international webinar on contemporary choreographies in Indian classical dance, organized by the Department of Mohiniyattam, Sree Sankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi. The 3-day webinar has been organized to provide effective lectures on the topic by eminent artists. Firstly, I would like to welcome Dr. Abu KM, the head, Department of Mohiniyattam, SSUS Kaladi, who is chairing the session. I welcome you, sir. Then I am very happy to welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Dharmaraj Adat, sir, who has wholeheartedly approved our invitation to inaugurate the 3-day international webinar. We are very happy and blessed to have you here. Welcome, sir. I would like to extend my warm welcome to Srimati Sindhu Yes, the head, Department of Bharatanatyam, and Dr. Medil Deviga, adjunct faculty, Department of Mohiniyattam, Sree Sankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi, for their presentation. I welcome you both. And it's my pleasure to welcome Sri Shankar Kandasamy, Creative Director, Temple of Fine Arts, Malaysia, for the keynote address. I heartily welcome the distinguished artists who are here to lead the lectures. Dr. Sadanam Harikumar sir, Secretary, Gandhi Seva Sadanam, Kadagali Academy. Sri Kalakshetra Haripatman, Faculty, Kalakshetra Foundation. Dr. Kalamandalam Sugandhi Prabhu, Mohiniyattam Exponent. Sri Nevin Harshal, Choreographer and Performer, Bhaskaras Arts Academy, Singapore. Dr. Vijay Sharma, Associate Professor, HOD Government MLB College, Bhopal. I welcome you all. Now I extend my warm welcome to my dear colleagues and students who are part of this wonderful webinar. I am deeply honored to welcome each and everyone to the 3-day international webinar on contemporary choreographies in Indian classical dance. Thank you.
Now I request Dr. A. HOD, Department of Mohiniyattam, for the presidential address. Officer, please.
Our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Dharmaraj Adat, a keynote speaker, renowned Bharatanatyam artist, and academician Sree Shankar Kandaswamy, teachers and students of Department of Mohiniyattam, and all other participants of this webinar, warm greetings to all of you. As you all know, due to COVID lockdown, all our academic activities are minimal. Now we are almost back to normal, and the Department of Mohiniyattam is happy to host this international webinar. All our speakers of this webinar are very popular in their respective fields of performing arts. We have an array of renowned personalities such as Sree Shankar Kandaswamy, Dr. Sadhanam Harikumar, Dr. Kalamandalam Sugandhi, Sree Haripatman, Sree Nivin, and Srimati Vijay Sharma, etc. Are as our speakers. I am sure that all of our students will be benefited out of the webinar. I am very happy to invite our respected Vice Chancellor to inaugurate this international webinar. Thank you. Over to VC.
Respected Chairman of the session, Dr. Abu KM, great performers of the art of dance, and other distinguished guests. It's a great privilege to be here to inaugurate the international webinar, Contemporary Choreographies in Indian Classical Dance, a 3-day international webinar organized by the Department of Mohiniyattam. It is very happy to know that great personalities like Shankar, Medil Devika, and others are participating, leading this international webinar. I think the innovative ideas put forward by the great personalities will improve the quality of our students to perform their art before the society. I am not I'm not a person to elaborate anymore about the performing arts. So let me conclude congratulating the department for organizing such a beautiful, important webinar, international webinar, on the behalf of the Department of Mohiniyattam. And with these words, I inaugurate the 3-day international webinar and wish all the success to the international webinar on contemporary choreographies in Indian classical dance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring words. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Medal Devika, the renowned Mohiniyattam exponent, and our adjunct faculty to felicitate this event. Chechi, please.
Namaste to all of you, and Honorable VC, Dr. Dharmaraj Adat, the head of the department, Dr. Abu Sir, and my dear students. It gives me great pleasure to invite Sri Shankar Kandasamy to this particular stage, the intangible online stage, which has become extremely significant during the COVID period. And it gives me great pleasure to be introducing a stalwart like him. Sri Shankar Kandasamy is an established Bharatanatyam dancer in Malaysia. He heads the Bharatanatyam faculty of the Temple of Fine Arts, Malaysia, where he was trained and continues to serve as artistic director, choreographer, and performer. He has given many Bharatanatyam recitals, both locally, and traveled with the Temple of Fine Arts worldwide, performing dance, dramas, and a variety of other performances. He's also trained in Odissi, Western classical ballet, and other regional classical styles of India. This gives him a rich vocabulary of dance, which he uses in choreography. And I'm sure the students of Kaladi are extremely blessed, because it's very hard to find people who bring in fluidity within their performance. And I'm sure you will benefit from his presence. Shankar has also been one of the key choreographers in all major dance drama productions of Temple of Fine Arts. And I think I have witnessed, I don't know if it is his work, but I have myself witnessed Shakuntala of the Temple of Fine Arts, which I thought was extremely beautiful. And the choreography, the choreographic genres, the styles they bring in is really tremendous. Being the head of the Bharatanatyam section, Shankar has choreographed and conducted over 120 arangetams to this date. His sound working knowledge in Sanskrit and Tamil, plus his Carnatic music training, makes him double up as a resource person and music composer for the dance and dancers in Malaysia. He also serves as lecturer in the degree program of the Malaysian National Arts Academy, run by the government of Malaysia. Shankar has completed his master's degree with the Kalai Kaveri College of Fine Arts, Bharatidasan University. Shankar has received the Beau Cameronian Award for Best Choreographer for a full-length work, ADC Crossing Borders. Shankar has been the main artistic director, scriptwriter, and choreographer for the major dance productions of Temple of Fine Arts. A couple of names are Panjali Shapatham, I suppose it's Neo Margam, Krishnayanam, Ramanatakam, Padma Purush, Crossing Borders, among many other full-length features. He presented the Malaysian Bharatnatyam Ensemble of TFA for the prestigious International Konark Festival in Orissa, December 2017, to standing ovations of the opening night. In recent years, Shankar has traveled widely to conduct workshops internationally, and currently with the pandemic, he's continued to do so on the online platform with international participation worldwide. He's been invited to present papers, lecture demonstrations, and workshops for many Indian universities and organizations internationally during this recent period of the pandemic. He was invited to be panelist presenting a paper on group choreography in the prestigious Natikala Conference, Chennai, in the year 2019. He was invited to represent Malaysia by the Indian High Commission to present a paper on the role of the diaspora in promoting Indian culture of the region in July 2021. So on this note, I think, my dear students of Sree Sankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi, I think we're all very lucky, with the master's presence, and please make complete opportunity, or please make use of the opportunity of having him here and having all his know-how. Even if you get a glimpse of it, I think it is really worthwhile. So welcome, sir, and hope you have a happy time with our students. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devika Chichi. Now, as we are all waiting, let me once again welcome Sankaracharya Swami for keynote address. Welcome, sir. Sir, your mic.
Namaskaram, everybody. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I must first and foremostly thank Dr. Abu KM, HOD of Department of Mohiniyattam, Sree Sankaracharya, University of Sanskrit, for giving me this lovely chance to share some of my ideas. Hopefully they will be useful to you and they will trigger some creative processes in everyone. And I feel very, very honored to be in the presence of Dr. Methil Devika. You know, Dr. Methil Devika, I'm a great fan of your dancing, of the beauty, the subtlety, the strength, the scholarship in your dancing. I think it's a real, the Natya Shastra come alive when you dance. I've been watching you perform, and it's always, in Malaysia, you have a large fan following, I must say. We are all great followers of your artistry. That is the correct word, because it is a combination of vidvat, scholarship, subtlety, the fusion of different Kerala forms that come together, and the essence of that, the rasa is really so beautiful. And I feel very, very humbled to be in your presence and to share these few thoughts that I have. Thank you once again.
My honor.
Thank you. So without much ado, I'll try to get straight into the topic of contemporary choreographies in Indian classical dance. So there is much work about contemporariness. In fact, today in the Western world, when a work is contemporary, there are greater chances of it getting funding and following than if it is a traditional work in the Western context. What is the first image you get when you hear the word contemporary? When you hear contemporary in an Indian context, what is the first image we have? We have an image of perhaps something Western, something fused with a Western idea, costumes that are not traditional, something that is abstract, something that is perhaps thematically current. That means we have a pandemic, there's a contemporary work on women's issues, on environment. The idea of abstract art comes through when we talk about contemporary. When we say contemporary, the word we have something that is non-presentational sometimes. It may not play to a gallery of audience. It may be very self-indulgent. The artists may be enjoying themselves without any concern about world outside. When we say the word contemporary, we are straightaway associated with Western ideas usually. And perhaps this is because the contemporary movement was started in the West. And the contemporary movement could have started as a defiance against a bourgeois class in a capitalistic society, in an industrialist society, where the working class wanted to defy classical systems that represented the upper classes. Ballet, for instance, would represent the royal class, the capitalist rulers. And so to throw away the ballet shoes, to dance on the floor, to roll on the floor, to concave one's body and not have an erect spine, for instance, to move away from anything that would be traditional, to be opposite of that which is traditional, as a defiance, to be having abstraction in art, to have something that is not easily comprehensible, perhaps, not lucid, not explicit. Abstract art in painting, for instance, modern art. The idea of contemporary as being modern, as being current. But what is this contemporary dance or contemporary idea in the Indian context of the term? In India, we never had this kind of a defiance against the form. So the impetus to start something contemporary, does it exist in India? Do we have a context for the contemporary in India? But the word contemporary also could connote or could conjure the idea of ever new, something out of the box, something that nobody would have thought of. And I get reminded of the traditional dance of Lord Shiva in the famous Natana Madinar in Tamil. Vegunagarigamahave. Vegunagarigamahave in Tamil we say. Nagarigam is modern. This Lord Shiva who represents tradition is now dancing in the most Vegunagarigam, very, very Nagarigamahave. He danced in an ever new manner. That means nothing repetitive. The dance of Shiva is the dance of nature. Nothing repeats itself. Every day the sun rises with a different shade, a different skyline, ever new. Every wave that breaks on the ocean front, the sea front, breaks in a different way, ever new. Ever new is this Nagarigam. Nagarigam could also connote the word Nagaram, where people come from cities, which is as opposed to the Desham or the country. So things are modern and new. But what is contemporary? What is current? What is relevant to us today? Thoughts that can provoke. What is current? What is relevant? What is current today becomes tradition after a period of time. Something that is current, practiced, and the cycles of time will sieve through. Time will test that which is eternal and hold it as a traditional form after a period of a lapse in time. So what is contemporary? What is contemporary now is tradition in the future. We all know that. And sometimes we fuse ideas with the Western world. The Western world is considered the modern world, and the Asian world is considered the traditional world. And to fuse the traditional with the Western is considered modern when we fuse an idea. Let us go back a little bit into history and have a look at certain structures that have emerged. We owe a great deal to Srimati Rukmini Devi Arundale for having rehoisted Bharatanatyam into a form that we are familiar with today and which is very popular. her time, the form of Bharatanatyam that she presented on the proscenium stage was contemporary. The gurus of that time would not have seen dance performed on a stage, a proscenium stage, and that too with musicians seated on the left side. Today we assume that as traditional. But at her point, the musicians were traveling, walking with the clarinet and violin and harmonium, all Western prototype instruments, Western instruments, and they walked around the temple prakaram with the Devadasi dancing, with the Natvanar standing and himself playing the Natvangam and singing perhaps. And it was a mobile kind of a movement theatre, the Sadir, that went through the prakaram. Of course, we also hear of the Sadir performed in the courts of Tanjore, Sarfoji's courts. But the form that she revived, or she rejuvenated, not to say revived, but renewed, one entire set of Western concepts or Western ideas were removed from the performance. She removed the costume that had lace material, Victorian type blouses, Victorian type cloth, and she replaced that with the Kanjivaram. She removed the musical instruments that were Western, the harmonium, the clarinet, and the violin to a certain degree, but later the violin was added because it catered for the gamakas that we find in music, which the key instruments like clarinet and harmonium did not cater for. And she positioned these traditional musicians on the side of the stage under the supervision of great stalwarts like Mysore Vasudevacharya and the likes of Taiga Varadachari and so on and so forth. The form of Bharatanatyam. This is very interesting. One set of Western influences were removed, but the proscenium stage or the modern day stage was incorporated as a new thing, but that was a Western idea. Rukmini Devi had trained with Anna Pavlova in Western classical ballet, and when she revived and she restructured the Adavu system, that was the most artistic thing that was done. Imperceptibly, the most unassumingly, the lines of Western classical ballet, the pull-up of the body, the arms, the structure, the body form, the posture, the alignment of the dancer, which was hitherto not examined from an anatomical point of view, was reviewed by the lens of Rukmini Devi through the eyes of the Western classical ballet. But yet, the most artistic thing was to retain the Indianness in all its authenticity, not to lose anything. The most authentic of Kanjivarams were used, the most authentic of jewelry that came from the temples, the temple jewelry worn by the deities, were revived and restructured into the modern day stage. Now, so beautifully, the Western classical ballets like Swan Lake, Giselle, if you see the early dance dramas of Kalakshetra, you will find that a lot of the entries and exits of characters on the proscenium stage followed a prototype or followed the blueprint of these ballets, the classical Western ballets. The idea of ensemble dancing, the idea of groups, the idea of symmetry in form and the intensity and vigor of practice, the idea of a professional company, all these was not known at that point to Bharatanatyam. But Rukmini Devi brought these changes in the most traditional way. I think the license that we have, and a very important point, the license we have when we want to create something is the depth of the technique that we have. If the technique is very substantial and very exacting and has come through a very strong path of rigor and vigor And it's that substantiality of the form allows you to experiment, because the audience then is convinced that here are people who are of substance. So Rukmini Devi, when she took these elements from the West, so we find one set of elements going out from costuming to musical instruments to the traditional movement, another set of Western ideas, artistic ideas, came into the stage presentation, which was not known at that time, and imperceptibly so, clothed most elaborately in a very Indianness that breathed authenticity of the Indian traditions. She also borrowed heavily from the Kathakali vocabulary and Kathakali influence of the ashans that were brought to Kalakshetra at that time. So here was a form that emerged, which today we call a very authentic form, a very traditional form. But at that point in time of revival, that form was a very contemporary choreographic form which did not exist prior to that time, was new to that time. Vegu Nagariga Mahave, Lord Nataraja danced in the most original way. So contemporary breeds an idea of holding on to tradition on the one side, because we can't run away from the traditional side that we are, and then bringing forth new life or new form to that. Udaya Shankar is another big name in the contemporary scene of yesteryears. He was the brother of the famous Pandit Ravi Shankar, and he was a visual artist. He went to JJ School of Fine Arts and then later to London and then to Paris. And in Paris, it is incidental how this great Russian ballerina, Anna Pavlova, was instrumental not only in Rukmini Devi in the south, but Uday Shankar in Bengal, to bring forth this Indian dance once again onto a platform. But the path of Uday Shankar was very unique, for he never learned any dance style particularly. He never learned. He was a visual artist. He modeled, he did clay modeling, sculpture, painting, music, of course, was running in his blood. And in Paris, Anna Pavlova had an obsession with the Eastern art forms. In fact, she's the one who tells Rukmini Devi, why don't you, instead of you learning Western classical ballet, go back, there are so many beautiful forms in your own country, discover them, bring them to the world. So Anna Pavlova here, the Russian, it was part of the divine plan of things that this Russian ballerina par excellence is instrumental in drawing out the best of Indian art, Indian dance in India. So she wanted to experiment with the Oriental dance, and she wanted to experiment in showing the East to the West. So she got Uday Shankar to just pose as Krishna, and she would dance like Radha around him, or pose as a sculpture, and she would dance. So his first introduction to dance was just by posing. But then he came back to India, and he wanted to do something with this dance. It was a compelling call. And so how did he go about it? He did not learn Kathakali, but he watched Kathakali extensively for months on ends. He drew Kathakali. He imbibed what he watched. He watched Bharatanatyam, watched the best of best. He watched Odissi, he watched Kathak. And as he watched these forms, he coalesced them all into his being, to a pan-Indian form which breathed a contemporary sense. Contemporary sense means you find ideas like man and the machine, for instance. It was the Industrial Revolution. So the idea of using movement in abstraction to show machinery and the isolation or the differentiation of man from his work. So that idea of man and machinery was a contemporary idea. Contemporary idea translated into a vocabulary of dance, which was not any style per se, but all styles impressionistically, and the key word is impressionistically fused into one. You could see a bit of Kathakali in the movement, you could see a bit of Kathakali in the costume, or a bit of Bharatanatyam, a bit of sculpture, the Ajanta Ellora cave kind of crowns were all fashioned and created. Instruments were not necessarily just the traditional instruments. They had Jalatarang and other things that came into play. Instruments that were archaic were brought in together. And a pan-Indian kind of modern Western influences were brought in as well into the stage presentation with lighting, stage usage, space, and so on and so forth. All this was not there prior to his time. And these were the contemporary movements which today we look as tradition. They have gone into the bureau of traditionality. So this is very interesting when we see. And to borrow freely, that is why, how does the contemporary movement kick off in India? How does it have a relevance? You take a great composer like Muthuswami Dikshitar, for instance, and the Western Notuswaram. We hear this in a Carnatic Kacheri. Shyamale Meenakshi. The British national anthem is taken and praised to God Meenakshi, goddess Meenakshi. God Save the Queen is converted to Sanskrit. So the fusion of taking the Western and internalizing it, the great faculty of internalizing that which we see and making it our own without losing our identity. See, the seamless way that Rukmini Devi has brought in the Western balletic ideas of form into the vocabulary of the Adabus. The seamless way that Uday Shankar has coalesced, not just cut paste, it's not like taking one Kathakali and one Odissi and something and a giraffe's head with a elephant's body with a donkey's tail. It's not like that. It's not just cut paste, but a very artistic way of eclectically subsuming them into a form which retains its own identity. When we see the great ones like Muthuswami Dikshitar, for instance, he brings down the ragas of North India, and same with Swadi Tirunal. They bring down the North Indian Drupad system, Shastriya Sangeet, and internalize it into the Carnatic mode. This is a very modern idea. In fact, if you see the Kriti, Akilandeshwari in Dvijavanti, it is actually called Jaijavanti in North India, but Dvija is second born. In South India, it is taken another birth. And in that, he makes a reference. He calls it Sampradaya Nipune. He calls the Devi, the one who knows the traditional structures. He is doing a very modern thing. He is taking a North Indian raga unheard of in the South, and he is incorporating it into the Carnatic system. And in that Sahityam, he writes Sampradaya Nipune. Agama Sampradaya Nipune. So that he says, you are the knower of the tradition. The tradition is a flowing stream that changes as it moves. Like a stream it goes. So there are changes that take place, and these are the modern movements which are modern today and contemporary today and current today. And those currency shifts with time. And that's the beautiful process that comes. The contemporarization of certain forms in the form itself, in the training, how that itself is a contemporary approach. In India, when we start to learn dance, we first say a prarthana to the divine. We say a prayer to the Divine Mother, we say a prayer to the goddess Saraswati, to the Guru, and we invoke the presence, and then we start to dance. In the Western world, we will learn anatomy first. The muscles of your leg, the muscles of your hips, the muscles of your entire body, and a working knowledge of the instrument is given importance. Swami Vivekananda made a very interesting point which defines. He says, in the Western world, we believe we are a physical body of flesh and bone. We believe we are a physical body, and we may have a spirit, we may have a soul. In the East, we believe we are a soul, and we may have a body. The body may come and go. This is a major philosophical difference between the East and West. Hence, when we start dancing, we pray, we invoke. Many dances are trance dances. People go into a kind of a trance, and then they start to move in manners that are unfathomable. The trance, the invocation is given a very important, the Purvaranga is given a great importance. And in the West, the body is given a great importance. You must know which muscle that you're isolating when you lift your leg in the ballet. You must know what is the maximum use of that muscle. How can we extend it to the furthest scope? In the East, we are playing with gravity. In the West, we are defying that gravity. But this Lord Shiva, who does he belong to? Does he belong to India? When we say Angika Bhuvanam Yasya, does this Lord Shiva just belong to India, or is he the whole world? This whole universe beyond the barriers of culture and nationality. This Lord Shiva, Sadanchitam Udanchita Nikunchita Padam Jhala Jhalanchalita Manjukatakam. One foot is in Anchitam, one foot is raised in Kunchitam, in a pointed form. All the Asian forms are Anchitam, we are flexed and we are with the earth, Sadanchitam. All the Western forms are pointed toes and they are off gravity in the air. And this Lord Shiva is both, or he is Angikam Bhuvanam. He is the whole universe. He is this and that and everything. In South India we say, Tennadude Shivane Potri, Yennattavarkum Iraiva Potri. Said, O Shiva of the South India, we bow to you. O God of all countries, we bow to you. That Shiva is no more Shiva, he is the God of all. So similarly, the dance of all. So how do these contemporary ideas fuse into the Indian concept of dance? Our dance is ever contemporary. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm speaking in front of all the Mohiniyattam exponents, and you know the history very well. And I'm not at all a scholar in that way. I'm just a practitioner of a little bit that I know. And in Mohiniyattam, it was a Uruvakina Urupadi, we say in Tamil. It was a form that was created by Maharaja Swati Tirunal and Badivelu and other scholars and dancers of that time. Why not? Why not something beautiful for the ladies of Kerala? And so it was a very contemporary idea at that period when it was created. Today it is a traditional classical form. But at that point in time, imagine, rewind yourself and imagine you were sitting in the court of Swati Tirunal and this form has emerged. Just newly, something new has emerged. Wow, the excitement that goes with the new, the ever new. The Abhinava, we call the Devas in the Devaloka who dance, they are called Abhinava because they are ever new. They bring forth the new. They never age. They are Ajara, they are Amara. So the dance quality is also Ajara and Amara. They don't decay. the ever new quality, the Vegu Nagarigamaghave. The first dance drama that was presented by Bharata Muni in front of Lord Shiva in the pavilion of Mount Kailash. So glorious was Samudra Mathanam. You know that history of how the churning of the milk ocean. And Lord Shiva gets excited and he jumps forth and he presents the Tandava. He says, add this to the dance. It will become ever new, ever beautiful, ever refreshing. So that is contemporary. Lord Shiva is the most traditional god, but he is creating the most contemporary concepts by infusing or injecting the Tandava into Endalasya through Parvati into the form. So that which is new in the timeline of culture becomes traditional after a period. But the contemporary way of thinking is a very interesting way of thinking, because here you have to think out of the box. The box of tradition has these limits, parameters. How can a Tirvanam that goes down end in the sky, for instance? How is a body that is erect and presentational cave? Why not cave, for instance? What happens to the form when it caves? A concave chest, for instance. What happens to the form if it rolls on the floor, for instance? So this is born not because of a defiance, but it is born because of possibilities. What could happen? What could happen if we throw things out of their context and let it shine in a new way? The contemporary. So what is the contemporary context of Indian dance? Is there a need for a contemporary expression? In modern years, we have the idea of Chandralekha. You might have heard of her. Taking Kalakshetra dances and then contemporizing. And she was one of those contemporary dancers who Rukmini Devi really loved very much for some reason. And she went deep into Kalari, fusing the vocabulary of Kalari and yoga, yogasanas, into a corpus of movement. My personal feeling is that for that contemporary form to be convincing, to reach out, it should be substantial. The technique that we exhibit should be substantial. Sometimes we delve in something contemporary with very superficial images of the West. We try to kick our legs like how the Westerners lift their legs, which they take many, many years to train. The way to lift a leg up is not easy. It takes time and a technique. But we, in the name of contemporary, we try to superficially mimic the West and marry it to our Indian form. Then it doesn't hold water. It looks flimsy. It doesn't look convincing. So in order to be convincing, one has to be bilingual. That Muthuswami Dikshitar was adept in the Drupad because he was already singing in Drupad in Banaras. And then he comes to the south, and then into the system, that which he is adept in, yes, Vidvat, he transposes that, or he incorporates that into a system in the south. So that form emerges. So in contemporary dance, there's a continuous emergence today in the Western world with technique. In fact, today the contemporary dances have become far more athletic in the Western world, in the Western context. And though the contemporary movement was a defiance against Western classical ballet, today the ballet trained dancers with strong technique are the ones that are able to convincingly do contemporary because of falling back on technique. Similar is with the Indian context. when we want to show a strong contemporary idea, it has to have a strong technique of some sort, and then conceptually we have to fracture that and think out of the box. Because unless you're strongly in the box and you know everything that is in the box, only then can you have the license to go out of the box and take things and put into the box. If you have a very vague idea of what is the form that you are doing, then that doesn't allow you sufficient substantial content to contemporize what you do. So like this, the idea of the contemporary, the idea of the modern exists in multiple levels. We have contemporary in terms of themes. You can take the Kathakali vocabulary and explore an environmental theme that is contemporary in one level. You can take the Bharatanatyam vocabulary or the Mohiniyattam vocabulary and totally make it abstract, totally devoid it of its expressional value, to invert possibilities, to convert possibilities, and to bring, there is always one part of our being. That is why the Indian classical forms are very complete, because we have the Nritta and we have the Nritya. We have the abstract and we have the literal. We have the poetic and we have the grammatic. We have the poetic and we have the ornamental. So it balances out and it satisfies the right and left sides of the brain. But in that, sometimes there is one side of our personalities which get satisfied or satiated by abstraction. Hence, when you listen to a raga exposition, an alap, for instance, it does not carry a particular meaning, but it carries and evokes a particular sense, evokes a particular sensibility, a particular aesthetic flavor, which cannot be put into words. But that part of our psyche is also something which contemporary dance perhaps would fulfill in abstraction. That abstraction becomes of great value when that artist, again I reiterate, has substantial training. A Van Gogh has a realistic painting on the one side, and then he just takes a brush and he just draws a circle with a line, and it's abstract, and everybody goes, wow. But that circle and that line would carry great potency. So many years of training to draw impressionistic, realistic realism on the one hand, and then when that realism tips into the abstract, it is so potent with a message that so many people could read into or could savor, could flavor, could enjoy. So that abstraction requires great depth of training, and not just anyone on the road can do that, though it may seem simple. The contemporary dance also is sometimes self-indulgent. Some people say, why is this person walking across the stage for so long? What has that got to do with anything? It could be very self-indulgent, can be very meditative, can be very introspective, which does not have entertainment value, does not have the value of one going to a dance kacheri and enjoying something. It may just leave you in a void, or it may trigger in you certain thought processes. So the contemporary context exists to trigger certain ideas this way. The lighting and dress that we use could also, I saw a very beautiful contemporary presentation in the Bharatanatyam mode where a lady had a square box of light and then a little dimmer light as a concentric box outside that, and the darkness outside. And her contemporary theme was of a modern day girl who's got a career and she's married and she's a dancer and she has always this conflict in herself to go outside the house into the workspace, from outside the house into the dance class, and her commitment to her family, her mother-in-law, husband and baby, and this entire conflict and the discounting and negotiation of her life in these multiple roles as housewife, corporate worker, and dancer, with the use of this light and her projection of spaces and the tension of movement, she very convincingly had passed the message to the audience of all that goes, which many ladies and many young girls could identify with. It is current. Current meaning it's contemporary. The theme was contemporary, the use of lighting was contemporary, but the vocabulary of movement was adavus, but not adavus per se, as adavus would be taken out from a varnam or something like that, or a jatiswar. The adavus were tweaked and the adavus were innovated to suit the theme, the contemporary theme of the modern day girl. So like this, we have many, many different kinds of possibilities. When you say contemporary, we have contemporary in vocabulary, contemporary in theme, contemporary in presentation, abstraction, what have you, the range. I mean, I myself personally am not a contemporary dancer, but I also delved a little bit in this area because I trained in Western classical ballet for some years, and a very close friend of mine was a very strong Western contemporary dancer. So I also trained with some of the movement and movement vocabulary. The contemporary movement is continually pushing the bar higher and higher, with it becoming more and more gymnastic. And then there was a need in me, or a kind of a natural want in me to experiment. You know, when you know two languages, you think, what are creative possibilities that come through this? A lot of Kathakali and even the Tirupuzhals in Tamil Nadu, they come through a language called Mani Pravalam. Mani Pravalam. Mani is gem. Pravalam is Pavanam or coral. One gem stone from the earth, one Pavanam from the sea. Coral, gem, coral, gem, coral, gem. Sanskrit, Malayalam, Sanskrit, Malayalam. Sanskrit, Tamil, Sanskrit, Tamil. Like this, a kind of a mixed form of language, a mixed form, which is so beautiful. The Tirupuzhals by Arunagiri Nadar, the saint of Tamil Nadu, are all in this kind of language, which is neither Sanskrit nor Tamil, but it's a hybrid between the two. And after all, God, He is all languages. And how can we address Him through all languages? Why not? If something is beautiful, why don't we just... And the test of time is there to see whether it will last and remain as a form to inspire humanity. There is nothing here to be ethnocentric or to be egocentric about the form. It's beautiful. Why don't we just enjoy that fusion? The fusion has to be done carefully, otherwise it becomes confusion, as I always say. The fusion of the dance, when you fuse two styles, the fusing itself is an artistic process. You can't just simply blindly fuse things because it may not work out. You must fuse it with an artistic sensibility, an aesthetic theme, a concept, the technique that emerges from that contemporary movement as to have a rationale, have a kind of a beautiful artistic reasoning of why those movements have come together in that trajectory, in that form. So I just like to share with you before we end, and I don't want to talk too long, some of the little bit of work that I have done. Just I'm no contemporary dancer. I by default, by accident, I landed up doing this contemporary work. I don't do any contemporary work currently, but the learning of the Western contemporary dance style has made me think out of the box. It has triggered me when I go back to my classical form of Bharatanatyam. It triggers certain processes of why not we do it this way. After all, it is also valid. After all, to end the Tirmanam in a Garuda Mandalam, why not end it that way? After all, the Shuddhi of the line is there. Why not do it this way? Will it be accepted? If it is done interspliced with the traditional, then you introduce small contemporary ideas in between, and they are substantial. The Shuddhi, the line, the form, the rhythm is very precise. Then why not? It is beautiful after all. It carries a lovely feeling. Why not we do that? So that sort of a thing it had triggered in me. So I did one work. My first work was called Hamsa Gati Bedam, and I like to share some with you. A little bit of that work, Hamsa Gati, in which I'm showing it is nothing to do with the Hamsa. It is nothing to do with the swan. The work shows that the swan, it travels on water, it travels on land, and it travels in the sky. It is a Triloka Sanchari, the swan. So the adavu is taken, and I've experimented with breaking it on the floor. That means we lie down on the floor and do it, and then we do it standing on floor level, of course, and the other one in the aerial level. So we try to defy gravity. So we roll on the floor, then we try to do that same adavu, and then so like this, like the Hamsa that travels through the three spaces, the adavu is experimented. So I like to show you a little bit. In this, you will notice that if you know Bharatanatyam, the Natadavu number, the seventh one is experimental. I'm just showing a small bit. So can we have that video a little bit? I think the volume is not there. So you see here the Natadavu number 7 is rolling on the floor, and this is on the floor level. You see images of the Natadavu number 7 coming in and out. I think the volume is not there, but it's okay. Actually, I'm dancing with a very famous dancer here by the name of Umesh, who is my guru for contemporary. But this work was choreographed by myself, and it was featured in a commission for a dance festival called the My Dance Festival here in Malaysia. And this was done in the 90s, 98, I think, 1998. And then it was also commissioned by Dato Ramli Ibrahim, Padma Sree, Dato Ramli Ibrahim. Yeah. So that's one. Yeah, I think that's more than enough. You can. And then I just like to show you some images there of a work called New Margam, where I had choreographed a whole Bharatanatyam Margam, Alaripu, Jatiswaram, and Varnam, Padams, a medley of Padams and a Tilana. The entire thing in a contemporary mode. So you can just show them the images, the photos, where I played with the concept in the Jatiswaram. I played with the concept of off balance, where you throw the adavu off balance, so you are not standing on your 2 feet. Here you see the Natadavu is going into the sky. The next image just can go like a slideshow. Yeah. So this in a Tilana, the Mayadavus I have. Yeah, and you can go to the next one as well. This is from the Varnam. Some ideas. I tried to play with the idea of using Vachika Abhinaya You can move forward. So they speak out the words from Innam Yan Manam. That's right. You can move on further. Yeah, this is also from Ariel. This is Ariel, which we're trying to do the Adabu in the sky. And like this, yeah. This you can move forward, yeah. See, this is off balance. You see, they are off balance. So the whole Jatiswaram was playing off balance, where nothing is held vertical. You are falling off. So the concept of playing off balance was the theme of the contemporary idea. Follow? You can follow, yeah. And move on, please. Some look very traditional only, but some are modernized. Yeah. Every Tirmanam was played differently. So, yeah, you can play a bit of the video. Now, I think there's a video, a little bit of the video from this, the Varnam that I did. Yeah. Some parts look very traditional only. I did not move away too much from the tradition, but some ideas are a little contemporary. I also played with the concept of lighting. And you see these two of them, they do the Chittaswaram here, the Nayika and the Saki. Yeah. So you see the Adabu is rolled onto the floor. The Katti Adabu is taken and the Katti Adabu is placed like this. I'm playing with the Katti Adabu with some contemporary ideas. So, yeah. So the Tirmanam has ended off on top instead of ending up down and then onto the floor, the Tirmanam. So like this, contemporary ideas have been played. Yeah, so thank you. That's about the video that I just like to show you some work that I've done. And with that, I'd like to conclude the session and open it up to any questions you may have and you may like to ask. As I said, I am also a student in this whole process. It's a question of experimenting and trying out things that work and things that the audiences like. And so these are thought processes in the modern. So yeah, I like to share some question and answer session. If you'd like to ask me anything particularly. Anyone? Just any silly question would also be fine. Don't be shy to ask, because you never know, something that you ask may actually have great relevance to a lot of people out there. So don't be shy, just ask anything that you feel that you like to ask. Nobody has any questions? I can't hear you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a true display of your academic scholarship. Now let's have an interactive session. Participants can show their intention to join the discussion by typing the letter Q in the chat box, or we will call one by one, and then you can unmute and speak.
Have I exceeded the time by any chance? I talked too much.
No.
Anyone would like to ask a question? Nobody's asking anything.
Hello, sir.
Namaskara, sir.
Namaskar. Sir, our students want how to choreograph an item.
Sorry, sir.
How to choreograph an item, how to use the method of choreography.
Oh, the method of, yeah. Because the contemporary, you mean in contemporary choreography, is it? For contemporary choreography.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you choreograph a contemporary piece? It firstly depends on your intention. What do you intend to show? What is your theme? What do you want to tell? And then what are the styles of dance that you are familiar with? And then with that style, Do you want to do something to that style? Do you want to think out of the box of that style? So you have a thematic content of what you want to show. And then you have a stylistic content of what you want to do. Like if there is an adavu, you want to change it around. If this teyate is going this way, how about if I turn it upside down? If I were to think in the reverse way, if you are supposed to travel this way, if I travel that way, what will it create? If I were to reverse the whole adavu process, if you start A, B, C, if I go C, B, A, how will that work? So like this, to think out of the box, to viparitam, to think ulta, or to think oppositional, or to think parallel, like this, different ways of thinking. So when you choreograph, you must have a rationale. I did this because I wanted to show 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to show this thing, and I have this story to tell. So it must have a kind of a rationale. A little bit of thinking has gone into it. Sometimes you may just move. As you move, you like this movement, that movement. This feels like that. This feels like this. You know, why don't? It may not have a reason. You may not have a reason for that. Then you gather them, and then maybe you compartmental them. You put them into categories. This is to show this. This is to show that. So then you find a structure. From that which you don't have a structure, you abstractly move. Then you slowly video yourself several times. Sometimes improvisation helps. You go on improvising and you video yourself. Today we are very familiar with all the video because of the online. And then you look at your video and say, I like that part, I like this part. Then you take that and you string them together. So that way, suggestions on how to choreograph. There is no, in contemporary, there are no tight rules like that. They don't have fixed structures. But it's how effectively you want to convey. Usually when we convey something, we have an opening, then we have the middle, then we have a conclusion. Just like anything, you want to wrap up something, you know, like, so that sort of a thing. Anyone else would like to ask any question? No? Sometimes a training in body alignment is very useful, like how your spine, your bones, they align in your body, and what are the maximum capacity your body can move in certain ways, to explore that, you know. That body awareness of your entire anatomy will give you possibilities to think, you know. Some of us are practicing yoga, some of us are practicing kalari, some are practicing Pilates, some are practicing different things. And in all these processes, we discover interesting usage of the body. And that can be an embarkation point where you want to start off to think in some contemporary sense. You know, and then fuse that with concepts in Mohiniyattam or Bharatanatyam or something that important thing is there should be a rationale. There should be some sort of a mild reasoning of why it goes that way. That way it becomes convincing. Otherwise it's too random. It becomes too random. Anything else? Everybody is very shy to ask.
Sir, can I ask?
Yes,
Namaste,
please
sir.
ask. Yeah, please ask.
When we practice classical forms, there is a rule in Aramandalam or holding hands, something like that.
Yeah.
In contemporary, we have any limitations or any rule?
You see, that is what I'm saying. In the contemporary, Western contemporary, there is a class, there is a structure, there is a syllabus. So they would learn principles like the Graham technique. You would learn contractions, how to contract your stomach muscles. And from the contractions, certain movements happen. Then you have Cunningham technique. So they have different techniques in contemporary dance which like a margam, like how you said in Aramandalam and so on, we have like that. In the Western contemporary ideas, we have a technique that has emerged. So they would learn that technique, and then, which is very ballet based today. It also is bordering on ballet. But in Indian dance, we don't have a system where we have come up with a technique for the contemporary. So we have to develop that technique when we do something. We say, okay, today I'm going to try all my movements if I were to shift my center. So if the Mohiniyattam movement is like this, if I shift my center, where will it go? If I were to roll on the floor and if I take this movement on the floor, what are all the possibilities? So we have to develop a set of confines, like we confine ourselves, and then we develop a technique, a contemporary technique, and then you can present it. You can say, I have defined this path, and I want to take it like that, something like that. So you have to create a technique based on certain ideas. There was a question just now on Mohiniyattam. Somebody asked, do we have any limitations in movements for Mohiniyattam? Within Mohiniyattam traditional repertoire, you have to stick to the grammar of Mohiniyattam. But if you want to contemporize that Mohiniyattam, you have to think of a way that, just because Mohiniyattam has a lot of sways, right? We have a lot of curves and a lot of the upper body movement that goes in a curve, and shoulders and sitting down. Now, if I were to ulta that, if I were to convert that, if I were to have a theme, like, okay, I'm going to revolve around a coconut tree. I'm going to just think the shape of a coconut tree in the sea breeze. That is my theme, supposing. It's not any form of, you're just dancing now to the sound of the wind and the waves of the ocean. You're abstracting it. Now, what all my body will go through without mudras, I'm not going to use any mudras. I'm just going to use my Mohiniyattam trained body to move like a coconut tree, like the waves, supposing. I'm just creating a topic, just like that. Then you develop an abstract idea. That means you're not dancing to music. Now you're dancing to the sound of waves and the sound of the wind. You take a recorder and just record the seafront. And then your body just moves according to because you're trained in Mohiniyattam, so your body will fall into those shapes, right? But then you're not doing the Mohiniyattam with the mudras and so on. And you limit yourself. You cut off certain things. I'm going to try this only with my upper body or my lower body, like that. So that way, a contemporary form, you are tweaking out, you are fashioning it out yourself. You're trying to get an abstract vocabulary on your own. So that way we can experiment. Have I overshot the time, sir? Sometimes I talk, I don't realize the time. I hope the session was useful to everyone and that you benefited by what you heard, and it triggered some ideas in you and also make you think, because as dancers, we have to be thinkers also. We have to feel and we have to think, because when we dance, we are appealing to the brain and the heart of the audience. The audience wants to see you, your thoughts and your feelings. So when we dance, we need to satisfy our thoughts and our feelings, and beyond that, our spirit, the spirituality of it, which hides behind everything. So these are important points that I feel hopefully have triggered by knowing a bit of history and how people have thought in the past and how they have done. We follow them in our path of abstraction and contemporariness.
Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed a thought-provoking session, and I think our students are very much benefited by your.
I hope they could follow what I was telling.
Definitely. I think they have also started thinking on what all the concepts.
Yeah.
So being within the tradition and moving to contemporary movement patterns.
Yes.
Okay, so we have got a message. Yeah, yes.
I'm so happy to hear the response, because sometimes, we are talking to the screen, we can't see people's faces, how they're responding to the session, whether it's engaging or whether they are bored or whether it makes sense. Sometimes when we get excited talking about things we like, but we don't know whether the students enjoy this. I'm so happy that you
Sir.
enjoyed the session.
Hello, sir.
Thanks. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
We wish to conduct a national seminar, offline mode.
Oh.
Definitely we will call you.
Definitely, I would love to come.
To see your performance.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I would also like to do a workshop with the students, maybe, and some teaching of. Even this sort of a topic is interesting, contemporary topic, and using Mohiniyattam as a base and exploring possibilities. So it may trigger some thoughts in people.
Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Okay, thank you so much. And
I'm so happy that everybody's enjoying.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this beautiful opportunity. It's a pity we can't interact with all the students. Thank you. Thank you. Namaskar.
Okay, we have the
I will sign off here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We have an afternoon session by Dr. Sadanam K. Harikumar on the contemporary approaches of Kathakali. So those who are participating can join the session by 1:30. Thank you so